Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Good morning.
Me. Morning to you.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
Pride. The most acceptable of the 7 deadly sins. Gay pride is a cultural institution in many countries now. But when are the rest of the sins getting their showing? Gay wrath is, by the looks of things, long overdue, of course, and it would be very much in the spirit of the Stonewall riots. Gay gluttony and gay lust are basically my Friday nights, but there's no reason we can't extend that spirit to an entire month. In fact, if we do this right, over half the year could be gay, and then the gay agenda would finally be complete. 7 whole months, can you imagine? 7 whole months of gayness. And then, when Gay Sloth Month comes around, as it inevitably will, the straight people will all collectively revolt against the sleepy gays and demand an answer to the question they've been asking since the very first Pride Parade marched its way gaily into town. The upset heteros will look up at us and they will say, "When is straight pride?" And we will look back at them and say, "Every other day of the year, bitch, what do you mean? I mean, like, what is Father's Day, Mother's Day, every day that hetero relationships are explicitly normalized by society, if not a year-long celebration of heterosexuality? You straights better be careful, or once Gay Greed Month comes along, we're going to go after that other 5 months of the year. There are 7 virtues after all, and while I'm not exactly crazy about the idea of Gay Chastity Month, there's probably a lot of people who'd be down for that. For now, however, the straights in my audience can relax. We have Pride Month now. June. One of the least shitty months of the year, at least where I come from, and the existence of this so-called Pride Month is, many moons after its establishment as a cultural institution, still a sore point for a lot of straight people, so for Pride Month, and for my entirely heterosexual rotten corpses I call my editors, I'm here to explain why Pride exists, and why there isn't a straight Pride. Like, what's wrong with being straight? Apart from it being disgusting, of course, like... Imagine kissing someone of a different gender than you. Ugh. How do straight people even do it? Like, how do you practice on a part you don't have? How do you know you'll be good? Like, well, we'll get into that, I suppose. But first, let me introduce myself to all of you proud heterosexuals and wrathful gays. I'm Brigitte Empire, science and culture correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, the only newspaper that celebrates Gay Envy Month, as every year during Pride, Dan has to watch me have a great time with all the gays through the windows of our offices, because, fortunately for us all, if his skin touches the light of the sun, he'll burst into flames. On that note, if anyone has a Buffalo Bill-style skin suit, I know a buyer. Call 1-800-GRIFT for more. Anyway, now I've established that Dan is a gay icon, I should get to the meat of this video. What is Pride? And why is there no straight Pride? My boss has asked me this every year, and since our newspaper changed our logo to a rainbow briefly before some turf from The Guardian accused us of being woke, they've sent me, the fruitiest writer at this dang newspaper, to investigate what the hell Pride is anyway. Well, the first Pride Parade took place in 1970 in Manhattan, in New York, the big eggplant, baby, in the form of the first Gay Pride Liberation March, and was organised to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall riots. The Stonewall riots themselves were a milestone in the fight for LGBT liberation, after police raided the Stonewall Inn in New York City, as they had done several times before under the auspices of enforcing New York's masquerade or cross-dressing laws, which required everyone to be wearing several items of clothing matching their assigned gender at birth, or be in violation of the law. If you're wondering if this sounds mighty similar to the drag bans currently being implemented and drafted across the modern-day USA, then you're right, and this is why they're being implemented, because in practice, the police used this law, and are currently using this law now, to make being queer in public spaces a crime. On June 28, 1969, as they had several times before, the NYPD raided Stonewall and began arresting trans and gender non-conforming people just trying to have a drink and hang out with their friends. This time, however, the patrons of the Stonewall Inn had had enough, and they fought back, with black trans women, butch lesbians, and more fighting against the police, throwing projectiles, and starting the confrontation with state power that directly inspired the Pride marches the following year in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, and eventually the global Pride movement. There are a lot of myths around the events that took place at Stonewall, and I'm not going to contribute to that by speculating or giving my take. But the reason the narratives can get twisted around this first fight of the Pride movement, which wasn't really the first fight or the last, but just the one that lit a fire that inspired many more after, is that the Stonewall riots are a sort of foundational story for the modern day LGBT rights movement. They're a foundation myth, if you will. We know certain things about that night. We know about Stormy DeLavery, who pushed a police car in protest. We know about Marsha P. Johnson, who is often centered in the story of these riots, but who actually arrived at Stonewall about 2 a.m, after the uprising had already begun. But she remains an important figure and is often credited with throwing the shot glass herd across the world, not the first brick, as the story is often told. Who started the riots shouldn't matter, though. What matters is the result. This isn't an individual person setting off the whole thing. That's not how this works. It's an anti-cop riot. It's an anti-establishment riot that set off this whole movement. And by focusing on one person that didn't actually set off the whole thing, we watered down the story. We filed down its claws, so to speak. Who started the riots and what part of the LGBT spectrum they were from doesn't necessarily matter as much as the result, and the spirit of the resistance and revolution that boiled over that night, as well as tensions that arose as a result of this event. Pride began as a riot. Often people in the queer community are forced to wrestle with whether modern Pride celebrations should be a protest or a party, and honestly, usually I'd be saying, why not both? But in today's climate, with all this shit going on, maybe protest just isn't strong enough. How can Pride be a party when we have the world breathing down our necks? Pride is not a protest or a party, really, but has elements of both at its heart. But more fundamentally, Pride is a riot, or at least it should be. The language of the unheard, to paraphrase Martin Luther King Jr. Furthermore, the origins of Pride marches come from riots by people of colour, of butch women, of trans people, of sex workers, drag queens, intersections between all of those, and more importantly, of the overall queer working class. Pride traditions were, after all, adapted from the Reminder Day pickets, held every year on the 4th of July between 1965 and 1969 in Philadelphia, a picket directly inspired by workers' strikes, with the demands being gay liberation and equality for all. The annual Reminder Day pickets were organised by the Eastern Regional Conference of Homophile Organisations. ERCO, originally called ECHO, was formed in 1962 as an organisation of East Coast homophile groups, which included the New York Charter of the Daughters of Bilitis, the Janus Society in Philadelphia, and the Mattachine Society of Washington and New York, and would grow to include others. After the Stonewall Uprising in June 1969, the organisers of the annual Reminder Day picket, Eastern Regional Conference of Homophile Organisers, suggested that they shift focus from planning the Reminder Day picket to organising an annual demonstration in commemoration of Stonewall. From the outset, organisers envisioned it as a national celebration. We also proposed that we contact homophile organisations throughout the country and suggest that they hold parallel demonstrations on that day. We proposed a nationwide show of support. To get planning underway, they formed the Christopher Street Liberation Day Umbrella Committee. The committee defined its aim of holding a massive march at the culmination of a Gay Pride Week on June 27th-28th. The first Christopher Street Liberation Day was a resounding success, the thousands of attendees surpassing organisers' expectations. New York, Los Angeles and Chicago quickly began planning for 1971, and soon other cities, states and countries would begin to establish their own annual Pride traditions. ERCO member Foster Gunningson Jr. reflected on the positive outcome of the New York Christopher Street Liberation Day in 1970. And each of these 5,000 homosexuals had a new feeling of pride and self-confidence. That was one of the main purposes of the event, to commemorate, to demonstrate, but also to raise the consciences of participating homosexuals to develop courage and feelings of dignity and self-worth. You see, the whole point of Pride is just that. Pride. It's a fight against its opposite, shame, which was, and for many still is, the default state of mind for LGBT people regarding their sexuality, their identity, their very personhood. In the current world order, cisgender heterosexual patriarchy is the norm. Any deviation from that is looked down upon, deemed inferior, or even unnatural. Many of our religions, our states, our institutions are built explicitly for straight heterosexual people, and directly show scorn for people who don't fit into that narrow vision of what kind of people are acceptable in society. Pride is about fighting that shame, about fighting for all of us to be able to live in peace and happiness, about equality, and the tearing down of a system that is intent on keeping us in the shadows, that insists we live in shame. And yes, that wording is deliberate because, Jesus Christ, if I have to see another big bang sending a float to Pride to insist that they're on our side, my guy, you're the people we're fighting against. Pride was, and still is, or at least it should be, an act of rebellion. It's not about assimilation, or at least it shouldn't be. If Pride makes you uncomfortable as a straight person, good. It's not for you. Straight people concerned trolling about kink at Pride, or non-binary people, or whatever, taking up too much space at Pride, are exactly the kind of people who supported the anti-cross-dressing laws that led to the Stonewall riots. the exact people we're fighting against. Oh, you as a straight person don't feel comfortable when an event explicitly made for people who aren't straight doesn't cater to your tastes? Go somewhere else then. There are tons of other streets in other cities that aren't on this one day a year letting us be ourselves, to show that we are not ashamed, that we won't go away, and that we will fight, whatever you throw at us, to be kept from the shadows. We refuse to go back into the closet, and if that means you feel a little weird, then maybe you aren't the ally that you thought you were. The increasing corporatization of Pride should be worrying to us. The police presence at Pride should be worrying to us. Pride evolved from a protest against police brutality, and we should always remember that. Police don't make most queer people feel safe, and they certainly won't make queer people of colour feel safe. Quite the opposite. Big companies and enforcers of state power have been infiltrating our spaces for a long-ass time, trying, as they always do with any protest movement that gains too much popular support, to file off our claws, to dull our fangs. Just as civil rights leaders like MLK Jr. have been sanitized and repackaged as non-disruptive, beloved leaders for a mainstream white American audience, our modern states would very much prefer us to forget where Pride comes from. That Pride is a commemoration of a literal riot, against the literal cops. And we should carry that very spirit with us, especially as our countries once again crack down on our rights and our abilities to live our lives in the open without shame, with, if you will, pride. We shouldn't settle for corporations having rainbow flags in their logos for a month. You want our money? Okay, we want liberation for everyone. Can you give us that? Our goals don't seem to be compatible. More and more, it seems we may have gotten too comfortable with the slivers of integration into society we were offered as queer people, and accept that those of us who are on the fringes, even as the white cis gays began to feel like they were finally accepted, black queer people, black trans women, sex workers, that they were right. Assimilation was never the answer. We cannot sit by and let the scant few gains we've made over the past decades be torn apart by fascists. We need to fight. Now more than ever, we need to remember what Pride is truly about. And we need to take the example of those who fought the police in Stonewall, who decided enough was enough. We will not win unless we are willing to fight back. That is the lesson we should learn from our history as a community. Now, about straight pride. One of the good things about living in continental Europe now is that you can get a beer, 2 litres of beer, for €3. And 2 litres of beer is about what I'm going to need. Happy Pride. May the record show that none of that was planned. About straight pride. Now, I think we all know you don't actually want a straight pride, right? You just don't want us to have pride events. And do you know how I know that? Because people have fucking tried straight pride, and there's a reason there's not one every year in every country around the world. People are like being really proud to be straight. They're not popular, and they're full of fascists when they do happen. Let me give an example. A few examples, actually. In 1980, 2 straight pride rallies were organised by the group Young Americans for Freedom in Massachusetts, with one of the events promoted with the slogan, "Burn a fucking effigy." Nice. The following year, conservatives at the University of Massachusetts Amherst organised another similar event. Only 50 people turned up to this one, and the event was protested by a crowd a literal order of magnitude larger. Straight pride, huh? Sounds like a riot, and not the good kind. Kill me. In fact, gay advocacy groups in the United States have pointed out the similarity between rallies where people wear straight pride shirts to racist groups wearing white pride shirts, which you might remember from when the civil rights movement was kicking off, and the same people who are now crying about straight pride were getting all up in arms about having to recognise black people as their equals. These same people now are talking the same nonsense about critical race theory for the same reason. They're still the same people. They're still mad about the same stuff. You can't fucking fool us with this straight pride shit. This comparison isn't without teeth either. Like, straight pride has been a talking point for the explicit white nationalist groups White Aryan Resistance and, wait for it, the Ku Klux Klan. Like, what's more white nationalist than the fucking Klan? So why isn't there a straight pride? I think most straight people recognise that heterosexuality isn't something that they're taught to be ashamed of. And that the people that are organising straight pride events, well, Their agenda isn't so much being loud and proud about being straight, which is like, you know, every club night I've been to in a bar that didn't have a drag queen as a DJ, like ever, but about recruiting for explicitly fascist movements and organising hate campaigns against the most vulnerable people in society. Straight pride is explicitly an attempt to counter gay pride. It exists purely in opposition to the queer movement, and the people most vocal about straight pride will happily tell you as such. For example, the 2010 Straight Pride March in Budapest, Hungary, was made with a specific goal, preventing future use of public spaces by homosexuals. In a similar case, in August 2011, the City Council of Sao Paulo in Brazil declared Heterosexual Pride Day in December, with a supporter of the holiday claiming that Straight Pride Day was not anti-gay, but a protest against the privileges the gay community enjoys. Ah, yes. All those privileges we definitely have in, checks notes, Brazil. Listen. Oh my god. All those privileges we definitely have. All of these powers we enjoy that the straights will never get their hands on. So what are all these privileges? Having a march every year where we demand to be treated the same as heterosexual and cisgender people while fascists protest us? That's not a privilege. That's a cry for help. Pride is not a privilege. Pride is a protest. It's commemoration of a riot. And pride should be a riot. It's a call for resistance. No matter how many big companies try and sanitize it for their own interests, we should never forget why it exists, and the history behind it, and why the world needs it now, in its true form, more than ever. Happy Pride Month, everyone. See you next time.
I'm standing on this platform, no one's stopping me to sing, but there's a multitude of sins that can hide behind your hashtag. Tell me again how love wins. Well, there's nothing new about this rage. It's a war that's always raged, like how no one bats an eye, but when 50 of us die and it doesn't even make the Daily Mail front page. Well, sometimes psych it up and walk on. Yes, sometimes it's psych it up and walk on. I'm right by your side, and that's what we call pride. And sometimes it's by guns, sometimes it's by words, sometimes it's by the North Carolina bathroom acts. And we're the same as everyone. We're all under the same sun. But if you're trying to suggest this is just about the West, spent our whole lives looking down the barrel of that gun, well, sometimes it's like an uphill climb. Yes, sometimes it's like an uphill climb. I'm right by your side, and that's what we call pride. And that's why we need pride.
I've been out of Britain so long I can't down my old pint. Be fucking embarrassed. Embarrassed to be British. Fucking hell. Alright. Let me read out my fucking Patreon list. Thank you, everyone. Helped me move away from Turf Island into the extremely stable environment of continental Europe, where I'm not worried about shit. I'm in a great place. Everything's great. Europe's not fucked at all. I haven't seen any Nazi graffiti around this city. Anyway, it's good to be out the heartland of the transphobic counter-revolution. I do miss the English friends, miss the Englishness, miss English pub, all that good stuff. My parents, Yorkshire puddings, roast dinner, lemon pudding. Is that British? It's British to me. Anyway, thank you for helping me and helping me make this big move. Listen, this is all I have for income right now. So if you want to help me out, and I would love it if you do, if you enjoyed this content, if you want me to make more stupid shit like this, because I love doing it, I love writing this stuff, I love doing it for you guys, and I love talking to you guys on the Patreon, shit posting with you in comments, all of that good shit. If you want to help me do that, you can donate to me on Coffee for a one-time donation if you don't have the funds, or better yet, send it to my Patreon. You can do that from £1 a month. I mean, that's worth fucking nothing now. Inflation, that's basically fucking dirt. So you can do that, and I'll be very happy, and you'll be very happy because you'll get videos multiple days before everyone else, and your name read out at the end. And you get exclusive content, such as interviews with Princess Weeks and Rosenkreutz. Yeah, that'd be cool. In addition, what I already said, I'll read your name out at the end. And usually I wouldn't do it in a British accent unless you specifically ask. Like, if you pay me on Patreon and you want me to do it in a specific voice, if you put a comment under this video or any video and just say, hey, next time, please read my name in X stupid voice, as long as it's not like racist, I'll probably do it. But it's never racist to make fun of the British, so here we go. Here's my patrons. Alright. Artie Wolf, Aidan Gaylor, Greg Noble, No Kings, Only Fools, H, Gianna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Jenny Linsky, Alexandra Lilly, Jay Peterson, Anne Becerra, Howard Lott, Laura Van Loon, Scarjan, Joey Cobalt. Oh, fucking love you guys. Goodbye, all a fucking pint. Pints are on me. Round. Lads. Football chant. You'll never walk alone. Thank you for helping me keep the lights on. Fucking good show. Good. This is just for me at this point. Jesus Christ. I am actually going to try and finish the beer this time. Okay. Still got it. See you next time. Look at this. It's got a little overexcited. Here's one for the OnlyFans. Maybe I'll keep that at the end. Maybe that's a bit too explicit. I mean, it's not. It's just my tongue. You wouldn't censor a tongue, would you, Google? You wouldn't censor a tongue? Look at that. No head because it's been destroyed. Phrasing. No. I think we all know that you guys don't actually want a straight pride, right? You just don't want us to have pride events. Hold on. Fucking my pop filter came off during that whole debacle. Looking very British then. That debacle.